My dear friends, let me begin with a simple question. What scares us more than aging itself? Is it the wrinkles? Is it the weakening body? Or is it the silent thought that one day we may be completely alone? Today, I want to speak about a fear many feel, but very few express the deep fear of growing old without caregivers. Let me share a story. There was an old man named Mr. Sharma. He lived in a small house, once filled with laughter. His children had moved abroad, his wife had passed away, and neighbors had changed over time. One evening, as he sat by his window watching the sunset, a thought struck him. If something happens to me tonight, who will even know? That thought shook him. But what happened next is what matters. Instead of allowing fear to consume him, Mr. Sharma made a decision. He said, if life has reduced my circle, I will expand my heart. And that is where transformation begins. 1. Shift from dependency to inner strength. Dear friends, when we speak about aging alone, the first and most important shift we must make is from dependency to inner strength. Because often the fear of growing old without caregivers is not actually about others leaving us, but about our belief that we cannot manage ourselves. We imagine worst case scenarios in our mind and slowly begin to live inside them. But life has a gentle way of teaching us that we are far more capable than we believe. Take the example of Mr. Sharma, a man who once believed that even small tasks like managing medicines or cooking a simple meal required assistance. When his children moved abroad and his wife passed away, he felt as if his entire support system had disappeared overnight. The silence of his house began to echo louder than ever. But one day, something shifted inside him. He asked himself, if I continue to depend on memories of people who are not physically here, will I ever truly live today? That question became his turning point. He started small. He learned to cook basic meals, not gourmet dishes, just enough to sustain himself. He organized his medicines in a box, labeled them carefully, and set reminders. He began cleaning his own space, not as a burden, but as a form of dignity. Slowly, what once felt like helplessness transformed into confidence. The truth is, independence is not about rejecting help, it is about not being controlled by the fear of needing help. When we develop inner strength, even solitude becomes manageable. We begin to realize that while people are important, our survival is not entirely dependent on their presence. Many elderly people suffer more from psychological dependency than physical inability. They feel if no one is around, I cannot survive. But when they take small steps of self reliance, something beautiful happens, the mind relaxes. Fear reduces. Confidence grows. Mr. Sharma often said later in his life that the day he stopped waiting for someone to take care of him was the day he truly began to take care of himself. And in that realization, he found peace. Not because life became easier, but because he became stronger. So, my friends, the first graceful step in aging without caregivers is not panic, but preparation. Not fear, but faith in your own abilities. When you shift from dependency to inner strength, you don't just survive aging, you dignify it with courage and calmness. One must remember that inner strength is not built in a single day, but through consistent small actions repeated with patience. Every time you choose to solve a problem yourself, you are training your mind to trust your abilities. Over time, this trust becomes your greatest companion in old age. Even when no one is physically present, your confidence will stand beside you like a quiet friend, reminding you that you are still capable, still valuable, and still whole within yourself, always in yourself, always holding your dignity in every moment of life itself with. 2. Replace loneliness with connection, not attachment. Dear friends, after we begin to build inner strength, the next important step in gracefully navigating aging alone is learning how to deal with loneliness, not by escaping it, but by transforming it. Because loneliness is not always the absence of people, sometimes it is the absence of meaningful connection. And many times we confuse connection with attachment, which creates more suffering than peace. Let me tell you about Mr. Sharma again. After he started becoming self reliant, something interesting happened. His house was still quiet, but the silence no longer felt heavy all the time. Yet, there were moments when loneliness would still visit him, especially in the evenings. Earlier, he used to respond to that feeling by calling his children repeatedly or waiting anxiously for someone to come and sit with him. But over time, he realized that this waiting made him more restless, not less. One evening, sitting on his veranda, he saw a neighbor passing by. Instead of just observing from a distance as he usually did, he simply smiled and said hello. That small moment changed something inside him. The neighbor stopped, they exchanged a few words, and for the first time in many days, Mr. Sharma felt a warm human connection that did not demand anything in return. From that day, he slowly started rebuilding his social world, not through dependency, but through simple, genuine interactions. He began greeting people in the morning, asking about their health, remembering small details of their lives. He joined a nearby community group where elderly people gathered to talk, laugh, and sometimes just sit in silence together. He even started teaching basic reading to two children in his neighborhood, not because he was obligated, but because it gave him joy. And here lies the important difference. Attachment says, I need you, so I am not alone, whereas connection says, I am happy to share a moment with you. Attachment creates fear of lost connection, creates gratitude for presence. Attachment binds, connection liberates. Many elderly people suffer because they expect one person, usually their children, to fulfill all emotional needs. When that expectation is not met, pain increases. But when we diversify our emotional connections, the pressure reduces. We realize that no single person is responsible for our happiness, and no single absence can define our life. Mr. Sharma once shared a beautiful realization. When I stopped demanding presence and started appreciating moments, my loneliness slowly turned into companionship. That is the power of connection without attachment. So, my dear friends, aging gracefully does not mean you will never feel lonely. It means that when loneliness comes, you will not panic or cling desperately. Instead, you will gently reach out, connect where possible, and remain peaceful within yourself where not. Because in the end, true emotional maturity is not about never being alone at, is about never being desperate in your aloneness. And always choosing warmth over worry, presence over pressure, and connection over attachment in every simple moment of life. 3. Prepare practically, not fearfully. Dear friends, let us now gently move to another important aspect of aging gracefully without caregivers. Preparing practically, not fearfully. Often, when people think about aging alone, their mind immediately jumps to anxiety. What will happen if I fall sick? Who will help me in an emergency? What if I cannot manage daily tasks? These thoughts are natural, but when they are left unchecked, they turn into fear. And fear, my friends, is a very poor advisor. It makes us imagine problems without solutions, and it freezes us instead of preparing us. Mr. Sharma, after learning emotional strength and connection, realized something very important. He said to himself, if I cannot predict life, I can at least prepare for it. This shift changed his entire approach. He did not sit worrying about the future. Instead, he started organizing his present in a calm and practical way. He made a list of emergency contacts and kept it near his phone. He spoke to his local doctor and understood basic steps for handling sudden health issues. He arranged his important documents in one accessible folder so that nothing would create confusion during urgency. At first, some people around him thought he was overthinking. But Mr. Sharma was not acting out of fear, he was acting out of awareness. There is a difference between worrying and preparing. Worry drains energy, while preparation builds confidence. When he installed a simple emergency alert system, he did not do it because he expected disaster every day, but because he wanted peace of mind. And that peace slowly became visible in his behavior. Another important step he took was learning basic self care routines. He kept his home organized in a way that reduced risk of accidents. He placed essential items within easy reach. He even created a simple daily schedule so that his life felt structured and predictable. These small adjustments may seem ordinary, but they created a strong foundation of security. The most beautiful transformation was internal. Once he was prepared, his mind stopped creating endless negative scenarios. He was no longer imagining helpless situations every night. Instead, he began sleeping with a sense of calm readiness. He understood that while he could not control everything, he could certainly reduce uncertainty. Friends, Preparation is not pessimism, it is wisdom in action. When we prepare without fear, we tell life, I respect your uncertainty, but I will not be controlled by it. This mindset brings dignity to aging. It allows us to live independently without constantly depending on others for reassurance. Finally, remember that preparation is not about expecting the worst every day, but about ensuring that even if challenges come, you meet them with calmness and dignity. When your mind knows that you have taken reasonable steps to support yourself, fear loses its grip. You stop imagining helplessness and start embracing readiness. This is how practical wisdom transforms aging into a journey of confidence, stability, and quiet inner peace that remains with you always in life. 4. Build a relationship with yourself. Dear friends, one of the deepest fears in aging alone is not just the absence of people, but the absence of conversation. Many elderly individuals quietly say, I fear I will have no one to talk to. But I want to gently ask, have we ever truly learned to talk to ourselves with kindness? Mr. Sharma also faced this silence. After his routine became organized and his connections improved, there were still moments when the house felt too quiet. Initially, he tried to fill that silence with television or unnecessary noise. But over time, he realized something profound. The problem was not silence outside, but discomfort within. So he began a small practice. Every morning before the world woke up, he would sit with a cup of tea. No phone, no distraction, just himself. At first, his thoughts were loud. Regrets from the past, worries about the future, memories of people who were no longer around. It felt uncomfortable, even heavy. But instead of escaping, he stayed. Slowly, something changed. He began observing his thoughts rather than fighting them. He started writing them down in a simple notebook, not as a diary of events, but as a conversation with his own mind. Over time, this became his most honest relationship. Friends, when we do not know ourselves, solitude feels like punishment. But when we begin to understand ourselves, solitude becomes companionship. Mr. Sharma once said, I realized I was not alone. I had simply forgotten how to meet myself. He also started reading spiritual books and reflecting on his life experiences, not to escape reality, but to understand it better. He learned to forgive himself for past mistakes and appreciate the journey he had lived. This inner dialogue slowly replaced his fear with acceptance. Many people search for company outside, but forget that the longest relationship we will ever have is with ourselves. If that relationship is harsh, lonely moments become painful. But if that relationship is gentle, even silence feels like peace. So, my dear friends, building a relationship with yourself is not loneliness set as awareness. It is learning to sit with your own thoughts without fear. It is becoming your own companion, especially in moments when the world is quiet. And when that relationship becomes strong, something beautiful happens. Even if no one is physically around, you never feel abandoned. Because you are no longer a stranger to yourself, you are a friend. Over time, this friendship with oneself becomes the greatest source of stability. Even when health fluctuates or circumstances change, the inner voice remains steady and kind. Instead of fear, there is understanding. Instead of panic, there is patience. And in that space, aging no longer feels like a decline but like a quiet deepening of wisdom, where every moment is lived with greater awareness, gratitude, and calm acceptance of life as it unfolds naturally each day. This is where true peace quietly grows within the human heart, always naturally. 5. Find purpose beyond people. Dear friends, when we speak about aging alone, one of the most important truths we must understand is that human beings do not survive on connection alone. They thrive on purpose. Mr. Sharma's life became meaningful again when he realized that even without constant company, he could still be useful to others in small ways. He started teaching children in his neighborhood not because anyone forced him, but because it gave him joy and a sense of contribution. He also helped elderly neighbors by sharing simple conversations, guiding them in small tasks, and sometimes just listening to their stories. And in those moments, he discovered something powerful. Purpose does not require grand achievements, it lives in everyday kindness. Many people believe that after a certain age, their usefulness ends, but Mr. Sharma learned that usefulness simply changes form. He found purpose in routine actions, watering plants, greeting neighbors, and offering a helping hand whenever possible. This gave him structure, dignity, and most importantly, a reason to wake up each morning with hope instead of fear. So, my dear friends, purpose is not something the world gives you, it is something you create through your actions, no matter how small they may seem. When you find meaning beyond people, you stop depending on presence and start embracing contribution, and that is where peaceful aging truly begins. Ultimately, Mr. Sharma realized that aging alone does not mean living without value, it simply means discovering new ways to express it. He no longer measured his worth by how many people needed him, but by how many lives he could touch, even in the smallest manner. And in that realization, he found peace not because life became louder or more crowded, but because it became meaningful even in its quietness. Dear friends, when purpose becomes the center of your life, loneliness loses its authority over you. You begin to see each day not as something to get through, but as something to give through. Even in old age, even in solitude, there is always a way to contribute, to share, to care, and to leave a small mark of kindness wherever you are. And that, my friends, is the true essence of purpose, not recognition, not validation, but quiet contribution that gives your life meaning even when no one is watching. It is this inner purpose that transforms aging from fear into grace, from loneliness into fulfillment, and from uncertainty into a peaceful acceptance of life as it is. And when a person understands this, they no longer fear the silence of their home because they have cultivated a silence within that is full of strength, awareness, and gentle gratitude for every passing moment of life. That is why purpose is not a luxury of youth, but a lifelong companion that grows deeper with age and teaches us how to live gracefully even when life becomes quieter, simpler, and more inward in its journey, always true.